one thing that I really want to let go of moving into this next year is rumination. I will catch myself just going in circles and circles and circles and circles and circles, especially when I'm like cooking or washing dishes. I know that it's like a side effect of CPTSD, but I also have become more aware of catching myself when it's happening so that I can change those thought patterns. Like, the way I kind of see it is that our mind is this field with really tall grass. That's just how I've always kind of imagined it. And each of your thoughts is a different pathway. And the more you follow this thought, the more those grasses get dampened and it's a clearer, crisper path. But sometimes that path doesn't really lead anywhere. And sometimes it even just keeps going in loops and loops and loops and loops. And you can't see that from a bird's eye perspective, there's actually all this other grass or this whole entire field for you to play in, but you're stuck in this area where the grass is dampened. So I think of that often, and I'm trying to make new paths in my brain. I wanted to take this day and do a yearly recap. I feel like so much had happened this year. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here. It is incredible how much my life has opened up just through social media alone, and I feel like I'm just getting started. I remember at the end of 2024 last year, I was in a position that I just didn't really want to be in. If you have seen some of my earlier videos, I share a little bit about how I came from the hospitality industry and how it was something that kind of carried me through college. And then last year, like I think in November, I was working at a restaurant in LA and I just was having the most insane reactions. Like, I was having panic attacks left and right. I would just get these like night sweats thinking about having to go into work the next day. And at the time, I was living in a city that was like neighboring to the restaurant that I lived in. So I would have to bus like 45 minutes, even though it was like a really short drive. I didn't have a car. So there was all this added time. And I just remember sitting on the bus going to work and thinking, there's no way this is my life. Like, I have to do something differently. And the same kind of trust that I put into these companies or restaurants, I just couldn't put into myself. And so I'd be sitting on the bus going to work, just contemplating like, what can I do differently, and what am I missing? And it really goes back to that self-trust, because for whatever reason, I just felt like everyone else could do it, but I couldn't do it when it came to making art a full-time thing. So I just remember it was like in November of last year, I told myself I'm just going to post every single day for 30 days on Instagram and just see where it goes. And I remember at the beginning I was so nervous, and everything was like had to be just exact and super detailed, and it was a lot of like process videos, and I was just posting about my art. But I very quickly got into this routine of like, I just have to post. There were times where I didn't have time during the day, and so I would be getting home at 11:30 at night, and just I'm like, I have to do something, like even if it's like a 5-second video, I just have to do something. And those were usually the videos that did the best, interestingly enough. But yeah, that really started to grow online, started to grow my account online. And I started to lean in myself more. I started to be less worried about buying these expensive materials, because I had more confidence in myself. I believed in myself more. So fast forward to this year, I had left that job and was working as an artist full time. And I think that there were a lot of things that I learned, because when you're relying on your art for your income, it makes you do things so quickly. You don't have time to doubt if it's gonna work. You don't have time to doubt if someone's gonna like it. You just have to make it and trust that it's gonna end up in the right hands eventually. I think that there was so much internal change that happened for me this year. I honestly couldn't even have anticipated any of this. I know I've said this before, but if you are pursuing a career or a life in art, it is the most internal journey. It does not matter what anyone else can do for you. In fact, there's nothing that anyone else can do for you. It's completely internal. It's very spiritual. And I had to come face to face with a lot of those things this year. I had a few videos that went viral. And of course, it feels great having the validation and all that. But then I started getting some videos that had hate comments. And it was work that I was really proud of. And I'm very sure in what I'm doing. But I think that I was nervous as to the scale in which that video reached people. It definitely triggered this part in me that was like this fear of being seen. And coincidentally enough, at that same time, I was going to therapy. So I was speaking to my EMDR therapist. If you haven't heard of EMDR, look into it. But coincidentally enough, we were going through some of these problems that I was having, like pattern problems in my life, and having this video go viral with hate comments triggered that sweet spot. It just brought up so much stuff in me, and I'm so grateful because now I can see it for what it is, and through therapy I was able to process it and feel those emotions and let it go. But oh my god, it was so painful. It was so painful. I think that my journey with therapy this year was also incredible. I don't know how else to explain it besides it felt like I was just dropping pounds of weight. I was holding on to so much stuff just from a very uneasy upbringing and early adult life. And I realized I had kind of put these blinders on or put myself in a box where I couldn't really get myself out. Like, I think my confidence was just so low and I just really doubted my abilities. But with therapy, I started unpacking those things and seeing that it actually wasn't this one situation in my 20s. It goes all the way back, which is maybe another video at a future date. But I think that this year I was able to really look at myself and do the internal work. I also started doing The Artist's Way. I'm sure you've heard of this book. If you haven't, and if you're an artist or if you're creative or not, if you're just someone who wants a great book, get this book. That also just sped up this internal healing journey. I think ultimately it's a book that reconnects you to self-love, but there's a lot of other layers. Yeah, I had started doing that and slowly my life was like disintegrating, which the book did warn me, right? Because this was I think it was in March of this year that I had started reading it. And even when I was like reading reviews online, they were always saying, oh, around week 3, like your life is going to fall apart, which if you check out my Artist's Way week 3 video, it did in fact start falling apart. But I realized now that it was things that had to change and it was all emotional, right? Like, I think that by sharing these really vulnerable moments in my life, which to some probably didn't seem like a big deal, but to me were very important moments, it brought such tremendous support from people. And that was a whole other thing to work through because I also recognized I wasn't used to receiving support. And when it came to not only being seen, but also accepting help from others or accepting support, it was so difficult for me because I just always thought, no, I'm fine. I just always was that person growing up. Like, I had to be fine. I had to be cool, calm, collected. I had to figure it out. I had to be the therapist. Like, I was not an older or oldest daughter, but I definitely had oldest daughter energy. And that hyper independence was just super hindering to my growth because I had to put aside my needs and my boundaries. But in order for me to recognize that, I had to understand that I even had needs and boundaries. Like, I didn't even know what I wanted. I didn't even know. Well, I knew I wanted to be an artist and knew I wanted to do art, but when it came to what are my favorite foods? Like, how do I like to spend my time? What are my hobbies? Like, aside from art, it was so hard for me to reconnect with that because it was a part of myself that I had closed off years ago. I think earlier this year I was really reconnecting with that version of myself. Also, while doing the Artist's Way, I started making a vision board, a manifestation journal. And every morning I was doing my morning pages, writing in my notebook, 3 pages a day, followed by daily affirmations. And I was visualizing how I wanted to live my life. And at the time, it felt like it was something kind of further along, like, oh, once I have the money and once I have the career and once I have this and once I have that, then I'll live the life that I want. And I remember I just had a point where I'm like, no, it actually has to be now. And I really had to take a look at my vision board or my manifestation journal and see that it actually wasn't really the life that I was living, right? Like, I wanted to live workspace, like a house where I worked and I hosted all my friends and we would have dinner parties, and it was in nature where I could work with natural pigments like right outside of my door. I remember writing that I wanted chickens. I wrote everything out in great detail, right? Like, I had this very large area or possibly a whole floor that was just for art in a house that was in nature and a bit more secluded from the city. And then here I was living in a loft in downtown Los Angeles. So it didn't quite match, but once again, I always thought, okay, well, once I'm retired, I'll do that. And I'm like, why am I waiting for retirement? What is going to happen from now until retirement? Like, I want that kind of life now. And so I was just doing a lot of internal work around those limiting beliefs that, I couldn't have it or it was out of reach. And then life just kind of happened. And I think it's one of those things where, like, you have a glimpse of what direction you want your life to go in. And there's these little synchronicities that keep coming up. And you think, oh, that's nice. Oh, in the future, that'd be cool. Or, oh, I really want that. But you don't really act on it. And the more you let these synchronicities slide, I swear, the more obvious they become until eventually your life starts to fall apart. And it's almost as if the universe is like, I've been giving you signs and you're not acting on it. So now I have to pull the rug out from under you and it's going to be painful. And this was one of those moments. Like, I think that I was thinking about this kind of house I wanted to live in, the lifestyle, like very slow, intentional living. And then later in the year, like towards the end of summer, is when the ice raids in LA were happening. And I've shared about this on my Instagram, but long story short, my boyfriend's paperwork was expired. So he was a DACA recipient. He found out his paperwork was expired beyond the point of being able to renew it, unfortunately. And so we made the decision to move to Mexico City, where I am now. And slowly, life just started to open up, I guess. Like, after we moved here, we stayed in the city for a while and slowly realized that it wasn't quite aligned with what we were living. I think that we were so used to being in the city and, having an apartment, having a studio over here, everything's bikeable or walkable and yada, yada, yada. And I just felt like I was just falling into the same pattern. I wanted to really lean into my art. And I'm thinking, okay, nature's like 45 minutes away. It's the same thing as in LA. Granted, it was great when I was in LA because I lived just a few minutes away from the studio, but when it came to actually hiking and collecting natural pigments, it was like 1 day a week where everything I needed to do had to be in that day. And there were a lot of limitations because sometimes I couldn't find the colors that I was looking for and I would go home empty-handed. And that is a story in its own when it comes to how I even moved into abstract work. But I didn't want to fall into the same patterns here just because that's what my nervous system was used to. He has family that lives a little bit further out of the city, and we found a little apartment here, settled down, and it's in the mountains, as you can see. And every day there's the most beautiful colors outside. There's cows in the field. Sometimes I wake up, there's a horse grazing. There's all sorts of little animals, and it's significantly slower, everything. Like the timeline in which I'm trying to move doesn't align. So there's multiple times where I just have to tell myself, you just gotta slow down, you know? And once again, it feels like I'm just like taking off this weight, this thing of go, 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 go. You have to rush, like rent is due, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, right? Like in LA, there is no resting really. I felt like I was constantly working and running around, but here it's significantly slower and I have more time, I feel like. And so I'm like, what am I gonna do with this time? Paint. But I think that 2025 was also a miraculous year where I had such wonderful people come into my life. Like I truly made lifelong friends, and they're all creative in some regard, and I feel so grateful because I had spent a really long portion of my life feeling alone, and I could recognize that I could hang out with people and I could have friends, but I always kept them at an arm's length away. I feel like I didn't really let them know me, because if they knew me, then maybe they wouldn't like me, or then they would see that I had all of these other faults. And granted, at that time in my life, I was also in a very, very toxic relationship. And so for me to let people in, they would also had to have to see it. And I just don't think that I was ready to acknowledge it. I was just completely in denial. So in comparison, this past year, I felt like with my friendships, specifically, like with my girlfriends, I felt so supported. Like there were moments where I was really going through it, and I'm just so used to doing it alone. And yet I had my friends really show up for me and check in, and it felt foreign, but I'm really grateful because it's like a healthy friendship, a healthy relationship that I can depend on. So I'm really grateful for that this year. I think I'm just excited to see how life continues to open up next year. Like, it's so crazy. This year went by so quickly. Looking back, I'm just like, what the heck? It went by so fast. I think moving into this next year, there are some patterns that I've become more aware of. And one thing that I really want to let go of moving into this next year is rumination. I will catch myself just going in circles and circles and circles and circles and circles, especially when I'm like cooking or washing dishes. I know that it's like a side effect of CPTSD, but I also have become more aware of catching myself when it's happening so that I can change those thought patterns. Like the way I kind of see it is that our mind is this field with really tall grass. That's just how I've always kind of imagined it. And each of your thoughts is a different pathway. And the more you follow this thought, the more those grasses get dampened and it's a clearer, crisper path. But sometimes that path doesn't really lead anywhere. And sometimes it even just keeps going in loops and loops and loops and loops. And you can't see that from a bird's eye perspective, there's actually all this other grass or this whole entire field for you to play in, but you're stuck in this area where the grass is dampened. So I think of that often, and I'm trying to make new paths in my brain just so that I don't keep repeating these negative thoughts that I just grew up believing about myself. So yeah, this year I really want to let go of rumination. And I think that another thing that also kind of ties into that is self-doubt. I just got to a point where I'm like, okay, if I can imagine it, it can be. I can create it. If other people are living this life, I too can live this life. But the only thing that's stopping me is me. For whatever reason, I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, I'm not good enough. Oh no, I don't have this, or I don't have that, or like, what is that? It's just like my own ego trying to protect myself. But from what? From what I actually want? It's very interesting. Lastly, I think ultimately I'm just really grateful for my entire LA chapter. It's really crazy that it's ended. I mean, the majority of my collectors are still in LA, so I'm sure I'm going to be back and forth. But to live there, I don't think is a thing anymore, at least not for the foreseeable future. I just always had these visions of like growing up when I was a kid, growing up living in a big city and being an artist and having my own art studio. And I achieved that. I was like, I want to go to art school. I want to do all these things. And I did all of those things. And I guess I just never really imagined my life beyond that. Like growing up, I think my life was so hectic. There was a lot of turbulence and like instability. And so I honestly just never thought that I was gonna live to be 18. Like I thought I was for sure gonna die. And then I didn't. And so I just had to keep going. And slowly I was like just at such a low point in I think I was like 18, 17, where I'm like, I can't live in these expectations of other people. Like I have to just live my own life. And I always knew it was with art. But in my brain, it was like, go to art school, show in a gallery, have a solo show, live in a big city, have an art studio, be an artist. That was just my brain. I never really had goals beyond that. And now that I've met those goals and I'm in a completely new country, completely starting over, I'm like, did I even have goals for my 30s? No, because I didn't even think I was going to live this long. I'm now kind of rewriting what I even want my 30s or my 40s to look like. Like what are goals that I want to have? I don't know. And it's crazy because you're on the right path when the path disappears. So that's kind of where I'm at. The last few weeks, I was super lost. I was absolutely lost. I couldn't make anything. I couldn't get out of bed. I hardly ate anything. I just felt like completely lost. And I think it's because so much of my identity was connected to Los Angeles and to this like persona that I had built. And I recognize now, even looking back, I'm so grateful for the work that I did do and the amount that I showed up online and how I really stuck to it. But looking back, I'm like, a lot of these videos, you don't even know me. You can get these glimpses based on my work and all this stuff, but I'm like, there's so much that I want to share with the world, and I just got to get out of my own way. So ultimately, I'm really proud of myself for getting to this point. I think younger me would be really, really proud. Yeah. So I think that's it for today's vlog, day 4 of Vlogmas, and I will see you tomorrow.